The story of Alice, Queen of the Apocalypse. This queen's story begins at the era of strife, where human beings were a new and weak race in the land of dawn. They worked in all corners of the world and created their own history. The human race had both good and evil. They could sacrifice their lives for justice, but they could also betray others for their own selfish desires. Humans were a combination of light and darkness. This huge potential contained within the human race were discovered by both light and dark factions. In order to compete for the faith of humans, the Second Endless War broke out. After a century of development, the Antalis family emerged as one of the most powerful and prosperous families of all mankind. It was led by the patriarch Brun, and Alice was his youngest daughter. But compared to her two distinguished elder brothers, little Alice appeared insignificant. Her identity as an illegitimate daughter blindfolded her, and she was never valued by the family. Alice grew up in this malicious environment. She hated everyone around her, hated this unfair destiny, hated the hypocritical gods the family believed in, and darkness continued to spread in her heart. One day, soldiers returning from the battlefield vied for spoils and divided them as usual. Alice stood in a corner not far away, staring at them coldly. "Why do you bring back junk like this? It really gets in the way," someone said as they threw a bead to the ground. Alice looked toward the bead, but unexpectedly, this bead, which seemed to be dim and dull to others, burst into a breathtaking rose-colored light in Alice's eyes. It rolled slowly to Alice's feet, and the moment she touched it with her hand, a demon's voice flooded her mind. "Offer your soul, my dear Alice. Accept our power, and you will get everything you want." "If I get what I want, what do you want from me?" asked little Alice. "It's very simple. All I need is the faith of your family. Abandon the Lord of Light and plunge into the embrace of the abyss." Faith was not a big issue for Alice. However, she remembered the vow she uttered every time she would offer a sacrifice. "The never-extinguishing holy light shall punish all betrayers." No one knew what the punishment was. Just as Alice was hesitating to answer, Alice's brother, Simon, appeared. He approached Alice and pushed her down fiercely, saying,
"It's you superfluous person. What are you doing here?"
Seeing that Alice was not going to answer, he snatched the bead she was holding tightly in her hand. Alice tried to snatch it back, but he kicked her into the air.
"A bastard is just a bastard, but a broken bead can be regarded as a treasure."
He glanced back at Alice, who had fallen to the ground. He snorted coldly and continued,
"You're just like this bead. Superfluous junk."
Simon flung the bead forcefully at Alice's lower abdomen. The pain caused Alice to let out a blood-curdling scream. The disturbance from the corner attracted the attention of others around. Laughter filled the room for a while, and Alice felt out of breath. When the crowd dispersed, all the built-up humiliation and frustration broke out. Alice clutched her stomach and stood up with difficulty. "If I succeed, will you give me enough power to take all lives?" Alice uttered. "Of course, my dear Alice." "Okay then, I accept," Alice exclaimed. "That's more like it," the demon laughed. A scorching energy burned a black mark on the back of Alice's hand and then disappeared. She put away the bead and left quietly. Brun was turning older, but the heir of the Antalis family had yet to be elected. Of his two sons, the younger Simon was the one he favored, much to the chagrin of his eldest son, Colin. Alice knew that this was her best way in. Alice secretly provoked animosity between the two brothers and used this to divide all the tribesmen into two parties, who later then kept fighting. During this time, Alice always stayed by Brun's side, playing the role of a good daughter while at the same time subtly hinting to Brun that his two beloved sons wanted to kill him and take his place as the tribal patriarch. Without much effort from Alice, the bond between a father and his two sons were torn to pieces in a power struggle. As the gap between them deepened, Under the bewitching influence of Alice, a tragedy befell them. Colin finally hatched a plot that killed Simon, in turn leading Brun to execute Colin. With the death of his two sons, Brun fell ill, leading Alice to assume the responsibility of the patriarch. At this time, the family was ruined, and all the allies who had been following them gradually severed ties with the Antalis family one by one. On one hand, Alice took care of the ill Brun, and on the other, she cheered up the family and gained the support and trust of the tribe. When time was right, Alice silently poisoned Brun. At the funeral, those of the Antalis family realized that the family had fought for the light for generations, but not once had the light ever blessed them. Allies were leaving one after another, not caring one bit for the long-lasting friendship and alliances of the past. They felt angry, at the same time helpless. Incited by Alice, the tribesmen entered the altar of light and threw all holy artifacts to the ground in rage. A dazzling light then fell from the sky above the altar, piercing into the bodies of all the tribesmen, including Alice. As they wailed, pitch-black wings mixed with hints of blood broke out of their bodies, and sharp fangs grew out of their mouths. This was the punishment mentioned in the oath, the curse that shall never be lifted. From then on, they became demons who would never see the sun again. They could only survive by consuming the blood of other races. After the light faded, countless blood-stained, demonic hands stretched out, emerging from the ground. By touching them, the tribe of the Antalis family were given the reward called eternal life by the abyss, and Alice gained her reward. She now had the power to absorb all lives. Once everything started to settle down, they realized they had fallen into the gap between light and darkness and would no longer be accepted by the world. Under the guidance of the demon, Alice led her tribe to profess their faith in the Lord of the Abyss. Then, the Antalis family disappeared from the world forever. In the faction of demons, they became the race known as the Blood Demons. Under the leadership of Queen Alice, they wandered in the darkness, becoming the most loyal servants of the Abyss. Read by Simbra for SirePlays. Story edited from official Mobile Legends lore.